We got Joe Miles from Osseo Gear on the podcast, and Joe, I'm really interested because you're from South Carolina. I've followed you for a long time. You're always consistent in South Carolina on mature bucks. What has been one of the biggest factors for you specifically on the consistent success of targeting mature whitetails in your home state of South Carolina?
Yeah, I think, the simple answer to that is having access to properties that have deer, and that's oversimplified. But really, when you have the access, the way that you're consistently killing them is absolutely obsessing over the stuff you can control. Understanding your bow, understanding your arrow. I mean, really getting into the micro details of everything you can control. And if you obsess over that and you have the access, it's a recipe for success.
Interesting. Okay.
The access thing keeps coming up with almost everybody we've talked to.
If they're not there, you can't kill them.
Yeah.
And we talk about this all the time, is that, I've got 3 farms in South Carolina that I can hunt. But I don't just sleep on that. I can lose one tomorrow. So every day I'm riding around, I'm looking, there's a for sale sign up. What's going on there? Wonder if I could get in there for sale. Wonder if I could get in there and hunt. So you have to constantly be looking for new property. You can never have enough. I mean, I got a little 40-acre tract that was an old development. This right outside of town. It actually butts up into town, and I've shot 3 over 120 in South Carolina, right there on 40 acres in town, that I can just about throw a football from my office and hit it. And I just stumbled onto that property and asked the guy if I could hunt it. So, I mean, obviously everybody goes, duh, access is the key to have deer to hunt. But if you're not obsessing over everything, like this mobile show we're at right now, I mean, there's a bunch of killers here and there's a bunch of high-speed gear here. And you need to understand, I bought a saddle. Well, great. Well, have you climbed up in a tree and shot your bow out of it? And can you shoot it as good as you can in a lock-on? Or are you just getting on this bro deal and wanting to be a saddle hunter, or whatever? I'm obviously not bashing saddle hunters, but whatever it is that you're using, you have to obsess over it and always ask the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I'm sure you guys get the same thing from a lot of different people, but that's my thing. And I think what I do a little bit different is that, I will look at the tread on my boots, because if it's going to hold mud on a frosty morning and I'm in a lock on and I turn and the mud comes out of it, so that's just something that obsess about.
The attention to detail.
Without a doubt. And those are all things you can control. You don't have to be a great hunter to control all your gear and all your equipment. Where am I putting my trail cameras? When am I putting what kind of trail camera am I using? Am I using it because Jim Bob told me to? Or have I gotten 4 or 5 different ones and put them over, like where hogs come in during the summer, and see which one actually transmits the best? In my, I got a big canopy in my swamp. So, is AT&T working better? Is Verizon working better? I mean, and if you do that with every piece of gear you have, you're once again stacking the deck in your favor.
What do you think is one of the most overlooked pieces of gear that guys overlook, that don't really, focus on, and it maybe bites them in the butt later on?
I think actually shooting. I see so many guys, and there are some killers that are out there, and I won't name any names, Don Higgins, that never shoot their bows. I mean, they shoot them 4 times a year, and, they kill giant deer. And I see them, and they're in the backyard, with the flip-flops on, and they're shooting 10 arrows, and, maybe it's every day. But are they putting their gear on, and are they climbing 20 feet up in a tree in the woods, taking the time to take their targets into shooting lanes and drawing their bow back and holding it for a minute and then picking a target and shooting it? That's the kind of stuff you got to do if you want to really take it to another level.
That's a good point, and that actually, I think, bit me in the butt this past year. Now, part of it was like a little bit of buck fever, but some of it also was me having kind of a weird shot angle on a big buck when I was rifle hunting out of the saddle. And looking back, it occurred to me that I'd never been in that situation before until I had a 140-inch deer in front of me.
Yeah.
Like the biggest deer I've ever shot at in Alabama. And I didn't get that buck, needless to say.
But there's a line that you can cross where you're too obsessive, I guess, and it starts running my wife crazy. She's like, all right, come inside. This is enough. So there is a line there. I mean, we're not NFL athletes getting paid millions of dollars to perform, but if you do kind of take that mindset, you know, to be a pro, if you will. It'll make you better.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I was talking to Hunter Hogan about this in his seminar he had earlier. What do you think? Is there any value for competition archery when it comes to being more consistent with your equipment when it comes to bow hunting?
100%. But because when even if you're shooting with buddies, you know, you see so many guys shoot by themselves, and you go to a competition, the pressure's on, your heart rate's elevated. I got 15 people looking at me trying to zip one through, you know, this little hole for the whatever, to win the bow or whatever it is. But again, I really think I mean, 3D shooting is great, but as tree stand bow hunters, how much ground shooting are we doing? Man, everything we're doing is elevated, and it's a difference. You know, when you've got collars and you've got your chest harnesses on with your binos, and you got to bend down and shoot like this, and you've never done it before until that 140 walks by, and you clip something and you shoot it right over his back, and you've put all that work in. Again, these are things you can control. Anything you can control, if you maximize it, it's going to stack the deck in your favor.
Yeah, and one thing you brought, which I mean I've dealt with many times, and I think a lot of people overlooked it, is the idea of those muddy boots and getting on that platform, whether you're saddle hunting, whether you're in a tree stand, whatever. And later on in the morning, especially when it thaws and it starts falling off, or even pine bark, you get on a pine tree and you don't clear off the bottom of your platform or your stand or whatever, and you get pine, you know, pieces of pine bark sitting there on that platform. You go to stand or move, you hit it, you crunch it, it falls off, hits the ground. That's one more thing that could potentially alert that buck when he comes in.
Murphy's Law, man. If it can go wrong. I mean, you know, it's the old limb. I always say it's the saw limb thing. You know, you left your limb saw in the truck. You've climbed up. You got everything set, and you look and you go, I can probably bend under that and shoot. And out you climb. No. Climb your butt down, go to the truck, get the saw, come back, climb back up, cut the limb. If you don't, it's going to bite you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, another thing, when it comes to, like, equipment and gear, I think a lot of guys kind of overlook the whole aspect of being, I guess, fluent in putting their gear up, especially if you are mobile hunting. If you got pre-hung sets, it's another thing, and making sure, like you said, everything's taken care of so you don't have to worry about anything when the time arises. And also probably going back, and this is a good thing for a lot of our private land listeners, is the idea of don't just trim your lanes once, but make sure you go check it before season and make sure nothing else is limbs falling over, you know, dropping over the canopy where it's covering up a huge shooting lane. And the first time you go in there, like, well, what the heck? Because you neglect it the whole time. So it's really like, from the private land aspect, doing your due diligence on making sure everything's set up correctly so when season gets here, it's turnkey ready for you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, also another thing that I think is interesting, talk about in South Carolina where you're hunting in these mature bucks. I'm curious, and this is a little, you know, sidetrack. Have you learned any kind of pattern, seen any kind of pattern with how those whitetails in South Carolina, with where you're hunting, how they act at certain times of year? Because I know you have success early season, during the rut, even later in the season. How do you go about keeping up with those whitetails on those farms throughout the season, and how do they act based off some of the other states that you hunt?
So South Carolina is tough. You know, August 15th, our season opens, rifle season. It goes until January 1st. You can shoot 5 bucks. So it's very tough. The advantage that I have early season is it's 100 degrees and 80% humidity, and nobody wants to hunt. And they're like everywhere else. They're bachelor grouped up, especially that early. So that is a really, I won't say easy time, but that's a good time to kill them. And then when you start getting into hunting season, it starts to cool off. The rut starts. The rifle hunters get out. And I'm sure you guys hear this a lot too, but the hunters are so patternable. I mean, I've told this story a bunch of times, but I mean, if I go to a new club, like we have hunt clubs, I'll go in and just listen to what everybody else does. And this is what they do. They come to the gate, they open the gate, they bang the chain on the gate, they drive into the home site, they get on their four-wheeler, they brum before daylight, they go out until 9, they brum and drive back to the home site, they go home, and they repeat the process in the afternoon. So if you're going to hunt on the weekends, then I'm a 9:45 a.m. hunter to 2 p.m. hunter, you know, during the rut. And then most everything is, we have some bow hunters, but most of the guys are rifle hunters. And because we're so flat and it's cut over, you can actually do a macro look of where these food plots and where these stands are and where the roads are, where the home sites are, and you can create funnels. Because those big deer funnel, I mean, like you know, like one farm might have a fenced-in 5-acre duck pond, and then there'll be a food plot over here. And if you look at that from, you know, an aerial, all right, well, he's not going to go in that food plot. He can't go in that duck pond. So that's how you create funnels in that real flat area, is you got to really look high And it may just be one little pinch. And if you go there, there'll be old historic rubs where they come through to avoid all the hunters and all those other things.
Fascinating. Awesome. Andrew, you got anything else?
Nah, man.
I want to wrap it up with a final question. While you got some guys taking some polls
This reminds me of NWTF where they started taking apart our podcast booth while we were recording. We're like, stop, we're almost done.
Hard hat.
The guys did not care. So the last thing I want to ask you, Joe, is if a guy going out for this season, whether he's been hunting 3 or 4 years, hasn't had the success yet, or he's been hunting 10, 15 years and hasn't had the consistent success targeting mature whitetails, what would you recommend for them to pay attention to and focus on for this season to hopefully replicate some success going forward?
The biggest factor to not killing deer is human intrusion, as I picked on Don earlier, but that's something he always preaches is human, and it's just pressure, right? That's what it is. So my suggestion would be not everybody has a early season farm. Not everybody has a rut farm. Not everybody has a late season farm, right? You've got access to a certain piece of property. If that property is more conducive for funnel rut hunting, then stay out of their early season. Stay out of their late season. And I know you want to go hunt. Well, go blow some public up or something else. But if your honey hole is you've got 50 acres of beans and a little piece of woods, and that's going to be an early season spot, then you kill one early, and you're not going to waste your time during the rut because that's not a rut property. So take things into context. You know, everything's on the internet now and on Instagram and Facebook, and there's tip after tip after tip. You got to take all that into context. If your property or where you have access to hunt is not conducive of that type stuff you're watching, like bed hunting, well, nothing beds on me. So why would you try and find a bed? Just stay out of there, hunt early season if that's what it's set up for. So look at your property and figure out what your property is set up for in context, and then focus on that time of the year to hunt, and then stay out of there so you're not overpressuring the property.
Awesome.
That would be my advice.
Awesome,
Nice.
Joe.
Love it.
Appreciate you joining us, man.
Yeah,
It's been awesome talking to you.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get you on for a future episode because I want to talk to you more details about hunting South Carolina. It's always a state that's fascinated me. Hard deer hunting. There's some killers over there, but man, there's a lot of hunting pressure.
Yeah,
I think
make
for interesting
yeah.
episodes. So I appreciate you joining us.
Awesome, boys. Enjoyed it.